Hello and welcome, my trivial pocket leaves. Today we're gonna look at exactly one fact about every Pokemon from Generation 1. Enjoy! In Generation 2, it is technically possible to get a Bulbasaur that has the move Charm. It is obtained through breeding, though the problem with that is that, well, no other Pokemon of the Monster or Grass group can learn Charm. Thus, it's kinda impossible to hand it down to Bulbasaur, making it only technically possible for it to learn it. This has been fixed from Generation 3 onwards, though. Despite Ivysaur being a frog and a plant, it is actually also a goat. How so? Well, Ivysaur was never seen to lose any battle on screen in, well, any kind of animated media. Definitely the goat. Despite basically being a fully grown plant, tree even, this is still known as the seed Pokemon. What's up with you, Venusaur? You have grown up. Are you still a child on the inside? Actually, I am too, so maybe that is why I like it so much. In Generation 1, a lot of sprites are a bit weird due to artworks not being finalized at the time when the sprites were made. But have you ever noticed that Charmander apparently had little spikes on its back? Honestly, I kinda like that idea and am a bit sad that they removed it. It fits it. Weirdly enough, Charmander can use, in Generation 9, the TM for Metal Claw. But Charmeleon can't. So if you wanna teach your Charmeleon Metal Claw, do it before it evolves. That is really weird. In the anime, Charizard is actually the first Pokemon you have ever seen. Well, probably not you, because this is only true for the Japanese version of the opening of the anime, while in the English and, well, other international versions, the first one we see is Mewtwo. And interestingly enough, both of them have two Mega Evolution forms, which is unique to these two Pokemon. Is there any connection between them? Who knows? Squirtle was the first Pokemon that Ash Ketchum of the anime wanted to choose for him as his first partner Pokemon. Or starter. Why do we have this weird new term? Funnily enough, it was the starter Pokemon of his rival, Gary. In early promotional pictures of Wartortle, you can see that its ears are not colored like the tail, but rather than the rest of its skin. Quite honestly, it looks a bit weird, but I think we might be used to this and think it would be weird otherwise around. It's not like bad or anything. Blastoise is not only the only Kanto starter that doesn't get a secondary type upon evolution, but also its Mega Evolution is the only starter type, Mega Evolution, that has no dual typing. Poor little water turtle. Or might that be good, actually? Would depend on which exact dual type it would get, right? Prior to Generation 6, Caterpie's form was this snake-like form. And now it's this form with legs? Pokemon shapes might be even weirder than the categories. Because, like, Caterpie does have legs, but it sure looks more like the snaky worm. Uba Aoki, a character designer for the anime Puella Magica Madoka, is utilizing a cosplay version of herself as a Metapod to show herself when talking to other people and stuff, to keep, well, her likeness closed to the public, which a lot of Japanese people do, actually. Butterfree doesn't actually give you free butter. Joking aside though, it was kinda the first shiny we have ever seen. But then again, that pink Butterfree from that episode isn't the shiny coloration of it, so it's kinda debatable if this is true or not, but I guess that's a trivia point for Caterpie. Every single Pokemon except this Weedle guy can learn a normal type move. Actually, that's really weird trivia, but here we are, I guess. In early depictions of it, you can see that Kakuna's tie shape is actually like little claws it can extend. Yet, it cannot learn any moves that would utilize them, so I guess they are pretty pointless, even though they are very pointy. Despite being called Beedrill, it doesn't actually have drills. I guess that's a localization thing that messed this up, because in the Japanese version, its name is Spear. Yeah, just Spear. Like the weapon. At least it wields spears, I guess. Pidgey is, so far, as of Generation 9, the only Pokemon with a base stat total of 251, making it the perfect Generation 2 Pokemon. Albeit being in Generation 1, like your mom. Even though Pidgeotto cannot learn Peck at all, a lot of Pokédex entries state that it fiercely pecks at its prey, or intruder, or something like that. Yeah, I think it's pretty low on the pecking order. In Generation 2, both Falkner as well as Blue use a Pidgeot on their final rematch team. Funnily enough, this is the first gym leader and the last gym leader you will face in that game, so maybe it was a deliberate choice. Or just an accident. A lot of gym leader teams in Heart Gold and Soul Silver, or the originals, seem like an accident. Rattata is known as the mouse Pokemon, which kinda makes sense, it being a mouse, or rather a rat. Yeah, prior to Gen 3 it was called the rat Pokemon. I don't know why they changed it. Is being a rat something bad? I mean, they are also just animals. Leave the rats alone. Raticate originally had 4 fingers, instead of nowadays only 3. Yes, that is special evolutionary trait, or did something gruesome happen here? Maybe that is why Blue didn't want to use it anymore. A lot of people say Ash Ketchum is not very well versed with Pokemon typings, yet he threw a rock at his Spearow in the very first episode. Yeah, that was super effective, even though it really backfired. As of Generation 7, Fearow is the only Pokemon with a base stat of 442. Yeah, I couldn't find much else trivia about Fearow, honestly. In the anime, Ekans have never been scanned with a Pokédex, so we never got a Pokédex entry from the anime for it. Which is very weird, as it appeared first in the second episode. Poor little snake. Did you know that the name Arbok, spelled backwards, is Cobra? While Pikachu is known as an electric mouse, it rather resembles a hamster more, honestly. Like, mice do not have cheek pockets while hamsters do, and at least to me, the tail and the ears do look more like a hamster's tail and ears than they do of that of a mouse. But I guess you can choose on your own if you see that or not. In the original Pokemon games, you could trade an Electrode for a Raichu. But the guy at Cinnabar Island who traded that Electrode to you tells you that his Raichu evolved. This is a leftover of the earlier planned evolution to Raichu called Gorochu, which was cut from the game, but I guess this text just still stayed. Both Sandshrew and Alolan Sandshrew actually have an ability that boosts their evasion in a certain weather, that being either Hailstorm or Sandstorm. The same goes for the hidden abilities, though those boost speed. That's too funny to cut it out, honestly. Sandslash's original name was supposed to be Sandstorm. Good thing that didn't happen, because with the introduction of the Sandstorm weather, that would have been very confusing and very hard to do on websites you will make about Pokemon. Nidoran female as well as Nidoran male are the only Pokemon that have a specific character that is not actually a letter but a symbol in their name, being the female symbol for this one and the male symbol for the other one. Also, technically, they are the first Pokemon with the gender differences, though they are exchanged very differently because they're treated like different Pokemon. So, technically, they are also Pokemon with forms, before forms were introduced in Generation 7. Several of Nidorina's Pokédex entries tell you that it can actually give birth to eggs. However, this is not a mechanic in the game because Nidorina is incapable of breeding. And the same is true for Nidoqueen. This, however, was also established before breeding even became a game mechanic, so it was a deliberate choice. You could see the logic in it as it grew to rather protect the children by gaining fighting abilities instead of, well, being able to breed. Because mothers are weak, I guess, or something like that. Or are mothers strong? You can see it from very different angles, so... It's weird, but I kind of like it actually. Usually the Pokemon you get from breeding is determined by the female part you use. However, if you breed two Nidorans with each other, or with a Ditto, then there is a chance to get the opposite gender of it from that egg as an offspring. Which is a nice little detail they included because seen nowadays, these two would probably be the same Pokemon. Nidorino, along with Gengar, is one of the first two Pokemon you ever see battle. Because not only in the games is it the introductory battle in the first cutscene before even starting the game, but also in the anime it's the first battle you will see. Well, if you watch from the first episode onwards and not like get into it nowadays, I guess. Nidoking, Nidoqueen, Rhyhorn and Rhyperior are all known as the drill Pokemon. Funnily enough, all four of these are also ground types. And I guess if you think of drills, you think of steel, probably, because, well, drills usually destroy the ground, so... Is that a kind of self-harm they are doing? The Pokédoll is actually based on a Clefairy, as you can also see in its Japanese name, Pippi doll. Pippi being, well, Clefairy's Japanese name, kinda obviously. Clefable is known as the fairy Pokemon, which, well, nowadays is also a type. However, this is not true for the Japanese version of the game, where it is known as the Yosei Pokemon, which, yes, it translates to fairy. However, the fairy type remains in English even in the Japanese name, being, well, the fairy type, or if you want to pronounce it more Japanese, like fairy type. Sorry if that was a bit bad. Of all the fire-type Pokemon, Vulpix has the lowest base HP stat, with only 38. Don't shoot it with water, please. It will not survive. Ninetales is not really telling you 9 tails. And in the Japanese version, its name is Q-Con. The con is basically the sound a fox makes in Japanese. And it's translated as 9 fox cries, if you wanna. Though it never had 9 cries. So kinda the same weirdness as in English. Weirdly enough. 9 weird? This is more personal trivia of mine again, but in the Detective Pikachu movie, Jigglypuff is seen as very furry, but honestly, if you think about it, if it is the balloon Pokemon, wouldn't its skin be more like rubbery? Of all fairy-type Pokemon, Wigglytuff has the highest HP base stat of 140. Despite this type combination not seeming that crazy, poison flying, Zubat and its evolved forms are the only Pokemon having that type combination. It's kind of weird if you think about it, because, like I said, it's not that weird of a combination. And on top of that, Golbat, of course as Zubat, is the only Pokemon of Generation 1 to has such a unique type combination. All other type combinations you find in Generation 1 have appeared so far in the series, other than Flying and Poison. In the original Generation 2 games, Gold, Silver and Crystal, Bill's grandfather asks you to bring him a round and green Pokemon, referring to an Oddish. There are two reasons this could be the case. First off, he could reference a shiny Pokemon specifically, because Oddish shiny is green, or, which is rather the case, it's the ambiguity of the Japanese word of Aoi, which nowadays usually means blue, but before Midori became a thing, the word for green, Aoi also would refer to the color of green, because in Japan, green and blue were kinda seen as the same thing at one point in time. Though, like I said, we nowadays have the word of Midori, which usually refers to green, while Aoi usually is used for blue. Gloom is a grass poison type, thus being a dual type Pokemon. However, it is the only dual type Pokemon that can evolve into a single type Pokemon in Bellossom. Vileplume has the Chlorophyll ability. What's so weird about that? Well, it is based on the Rafflesia, and that does not have any chlorophyll in it. Paras and its evolution Parasect are the only Pokemon that share the egg group combination of grass and bug. On top of that, Parasect and of course Paras are also the only bug type Pokemon belonging to the grass egg group. Venonat and its evolution are the Pokemon with the longest disappearance from any regional dex in the series, having their last regional dex entry prior to Skull and Violet being in Crystal. That is 22 years ago. Crazy. Did you miss them? In early official artworks, Venomoth had 2 yellow spots on its wings, which later were removed. However, in Generation 3, in the palette for the sprite, these yellows are still in there. Diglett actually has feet, as confirmed in Pokemon Mystery Dungeon. You think it has like a long body that has like feet or something? Like it's a worm with feet? No matter how I imagine it, it looks so weird. Of all the ground type Pokemon, Dugtrio has the highest base speed. However, when it comes to all Pokemon that have the highest speed of their respective typing, it is the slowest of them all. Fitting for a ground type, actually. I would have guessed ground or rock type would be the case with that. Meowth was chosen for Team Rocket not because of any kind of reason that cats are thievish or anything, but because its number of 52 is basically Pikachu's number 25 turned around. In the TCG, before the release of the Alola games and giving us a dark type version of Persian, it was part of a darkness type card. That's interesting. Maybe they were onto something there. Oh, it's just a coincidence. Probably a coincidence. Most of these things are coincidences. Series composer Junichi Masuda has said that Psyduck is his favorite Pokemon. I hope he doesn't, like, suffer from headaches. That would be sad. A lot of people think that Psyduck and Golduck's names were, well, exchanged accidentally. However, that is not necessarily the case. Yes, Golduck is blue while Psyduck is yellow, or goldish if you want. However, gold is often associated with psychic abilities. So maybe the name fits after all. Even if it is not a psychic type. In the anime, Mankey actually evolved via the usage of an item, Ash's Cap specifically. Well, of course, that didn't have anything to do with it, but I didn't find any really interesting trivia on this. So, yeah. Make of that whatever you want. According to Pokemon the animation, Pokeballs were invented due to primates. However, that is very debatable and questionable, as, well, we have seen in history that Pokeballs were created and Primate wasn't to be found in that game. And there are a lot of other things that contradict this. I guess that Pokemon the animation book is probably very uncanon. The better Pokemon names in Red and Blue name Growlithe as Flamey. And honestly, I would have liked that. That's a cute name. Yeah, Arcanine, the legendary Pokemon. I'm gonna do that. Not because it's such astonishing new news that it is referred to as the legendary Pokemon, albeit not being a legendary Pokemon, but because I just want to say, do something with that. Make it like something. The Paradox Pokemon were a great chance to turn it into kind of a legendary Pokemon. Yeah, give us like Ancient Arcanine, which is an actual legendary Pokemon. Why not? Poliwag is Satoshi Tajiri's favorite Pokemon, with the creator of Pokemon, basically. Thus, in the Pokemon Adventures manga, Red's starting Pokemon was technically a Poliwag, even though we have seen it in its evolved form first. But at one point, he caught it at that stage. Poliwhirls whirl worlds into the other direction than Poliwags did. Why? Well, maybe it's just an error that wasn't noticed but was too late to change, though I guess there is some kind of deliberate meaning to that, even though we don't know that meaning, because they could have fixed that once they noticed it, even in later generations. It's not the first Pokemon that changed something about its design. In its early design, Poliwrath was shown wearing a crown, making it a bit more different than it is now, and quite honestly, it would have been necessary to change the design up way more in regards to Poliwhirl. However, this crown probably was later also at least part of the reason why it can also evolve with a King's Crown in Generation 2. In Pokemon Conquest, Abra is seen as being a floating Pokemon. Despite that, it does count as a grounded Pokemon, triggering ground traps and things. Weird. According to some Pokedex entries, Kadabra was once a human boy with psychic abilities. Though that would be very weird, because did he just live as a Pokemon then? Did he just transform into this Pokemon, but the Pokemon existed before? It has a pre-evolution after all. It doesn't really make much sense, but, well, maybe it was Bill's fault and something has gone horribly wrong. In Red and Blue, if the player's Pokemon has red HP, and then the opponent sends out an Alakazam, it has the cry of a Ghastly. That is a really weird thing to happen. In episode 29 of the anime, Machop's Pokedex entry states that it is pure muscle. So, as the human body as well is like almost all muscle too, does that mean it doesn't have any veins, organs, blood in it? Because otherwise, if it does have these things, it's basically the same as other animals or Pokemon or humans, right? So there needs to be some kind more muscle there. Are its eyes made out of muscles? That would be some pretty strong eyesight. Some of Machoke's Pokedex entries state that it has a belt that holds back its power, and without it, it would be unstoppable. Is this secretly the strongest Pokemon ever? It just decides to, well, not be that? That's weird. Machoke has 4 arms, similar to Graveler. However, Graveler goes back to 2 arms while evolving into Golem. So technically you could say it's a similar situation as Carablast's evolution, for example, where you have to trade it with a certain Pokemon. Though you don't have to trade it with a certain Pokemon, it evolves regardless of what you trade with, but maybe there is a connection between Graveler and Machoke and Machamp and Golem that we just don't know yet. While Bellsprout can learn Leech Life through breeding, it's not capable of learning it through the usage of a TM. This was fixed in Scarlet and Violet though. Even though Whippoonbell is based on a pitcher plant, which lure in their prey via a sweet scent and then it sticks to the inside, it's absolutely not doing that, but instead it just douses them with a poisonous powder. It also apparently slices its prey up if it's too big to eat the parts of it. Pokemon for children! Victreebel in Generation 1 has the highest index number out of all the Pokemon in the game. The index number basically dictates a few things like the location you can find it, items and all that stuff. A lot of Tentacool's Pokédex entries mention that it shoots beams from its crystal-like eyes. Wouldn't that mean that the eyes we perceive as eyes are actually fake eyes? And the actual eyes of this Pokemon are the huge red crystal-looking things on the side of its head? A lot of Tentacruel's Pokédex entries mention it has 80 tentacles, though the most we have ever seen in any kind of artwork, sprite and whatever is 14. That's not even close. Geodude proves to us that many people in the Pokemon world are in desperate need of glasses or are straight out blind. Because the Pokédex tells us a lot of times people stumble over them. They are 40 centimeters tall. How do you not see them? Graveler's evolutionary line is the only 3-stage evolution line where all 3 parts of that line have a regional form. In the original Pokemon Red, Blue and Yellow, Golem is the only Pokemon you will never be able to see without trading. With the exception of Chinese, Ponyta is one of the few non-legendary Pokemon that have the same name all over the world. Even though in Germany we do write it with an I instead of a Y, but the pronunciation is still the same. In Pokemon Red and Blue, you can only obtain Rapidash by evolving your Ponyta. However, in the Japanese version of Blue, it can be found in Cerulean Cave. Whatever it does there, because everything mentions that it lives in fields. So why is it in this cave, surrounded and only accessible via water? Slowpoke is the only Pokemon that got a song specifically related to it. And it was just released. Slowbro is, as of now, the only Pokemon that got a regional form as well as a Mega Evolution. This might change as soon as Legends ZA is out, but well, I cannot look into the future. Also, seems that it has been the fastest at something at least, despite being called a slow bro. Magnemite, and of course its evolution, were the first Pokemon to change type while the generation changed, with Generation 2 introducing the Steel type, which they then became. After Magnemite evolves into Magneton, it becomes exactly 10 times heavier than it was before, even though it is made out of 3 Magnemites. So can we assume that Magnemite is hollow, while Magneton is not hollow anymore? Farfetch'd is the only Pokemon with a base stat total of 377, though that is only post X and Y. However, prior to X and Y, it also had that uniqueness, being the only Pokemon with a base stat total of 352. Doduo is based on the extinct bird called a dodo. However, if you look at it, it really looks more like a kiwi. A lot of sources state that Dodrio has infighting between the three heads, and one of them becoming the leader. However, evolutionary, this just doesn't make sense, because it basically would say it's self-harming itself for no real reason, as no matter which one swallows food or whatever, it goes into the same body. Seal is the only non-ice type Pokemon that can learn Ice Body as its ability. That makes it also the only Pokemon that can take advantage of the ability's immunity to hail. In the Pokemon Red and Blue data, Dugong was known as Manatee. It's still just not a design, and just an animal used as a Pokemon. Grimer's Japanese name, Beto Beta, comes from the words Beto Beto, which means sticky, and Beta Beta, which means sticky. So its Japanese name is literally Sticky Sticky. Marked backwards is your mom. When a Shelder bites a Slowpoke's tail, they evolve into a Slowbro. That fact is widely known, but it changes very much in, well, how it looks and even its coloration. However, if you look at Shiny Slowbro, it does retain Shelder's shiny coloration. So, what's up with that? The Pokédex entry in Pokemon Red and Pokemon Blue claims that we have never seen the innards of Cloyster. However, we can clearly see its pearl-shaped body. Yeah. Despite Ghastly being a poison type, it cannot learn any poison type moves outside of Pokemon Let's Go and Pokemon Legends Arceus. Haunter is the Pokemon with the most core series game cry changes, changing its cry in Generation 2, 3, and 4. Think Generation 10 has a new cry for it? Gengar is the favorite Pokemon of Ken Sugimori, the main artist creating most of the Pokemon artworks. It's his favorite because it's so easy to draw. That sounds like a very sad reason of a very overworked man. Onix's Pokédex entries for Red and Blue claim that it hardens over time, becoming closer and similar to Diamond, but colored black. We have never seen such a black version of Onix so far, so maybe as a regional form, and not to this Pokédex entry? A dark type Onix maybe? Drowsy looks like chocolate pudding with vanilla sauce on top. Yeah, let's give you a real trivia here. It is well known for eating dreams, yet it cannot learn Dream Eater except in the Let's Go games. That is really, really stupid. Hypno, according to Bulbapedia, is most likely left-handed, because it always holds the pendulum with the left hand. Counter argument though, if you always hold a pendulum with your left hand, you are probably right-handed, because that means you can grab and do other stuff with your main hand without needing to move that pendulum. So I would say it is rather right-handed. Krabby has the same name in all European language versions of the franchise. However, the same might sound very lazy, But looking at the Japanese name, it's literally just called crab. You can always be lazy, I guess. Many of Kingler's Pokédex entries state that it has a crushing power of 10,000 horsepower. That doesn't mean anything though, because horsepower is actually the unit of power energy divided by time and has nothing to do with pressure. So telling us this number tells us basically nothing. Except maybe it can close its claw that fast, but that still doesn't mean anything in regards to power. Voltorb basically is what a Mimic is in other RPGs. You know, those chests that when you open them, they attack you. Because it looks like a Pokeball, and people confuse it with a Pokeball and pick it up. The problem with that is that Voltorb is 50 centimeters in, well, diameter. Which either means Pokeballs are really, really huge, or the people in the Pokemon world are just purely dumb. Your decision. In Red, Blue, Fire Red, and Leaf Green, you can receive an Electrode as low as level 3 by catching a Pikachu in Viridian Forest, then evolving it via Thunderstone and trading it to a man on Cinnabar Island. Despite looking like eggs, Execute actually are seeds. They are still in the category of egg Pokemon though, because yeah, it's time for me not knowing that. Executor is the only Pokemon featuring its original as well as regional form in the Pokédex, in this case of the Blueberry Academy. Cubone is the only Pokemon capable of evolving into a dual-type Pokemon that does not share any of its original typing, by evolving it into Alolan Marowak, which, instead of a ground type, is a fire ghost type. Even to this day, it is still unknown how Marowak actually dies without dying, because, well, apparently Cubone wears the skull of its mother. I would simply assume that's kind of a legend people tell, but not actually true, and it just is born with that skull on its head. It might even be grown to that, as it grows tighter to it when evolving into Marowak. Hitmonlee's name is based on Bruce Lee, who is famous for his 1-inch punch. Hitmonlee and Hitmonchan are the only Pokemon introduced as not related to each other, albeit counterparts of course, but then later got tied together in an evolutionary line in Generation 2. Lickitung was credited in the N64 game Paperboy. I wonder what its job was there. Maybe I don't want to know. Coughing first was supposed to be called Nye or Ni or NY. Who knows who pronounces that correctly. But it was related to New York, because New York is such a poisonous place to live, I guess. Don't breathe if you live in New York, I guess. And especially do not breathe if you live in LA, because the evolution, Wheezing, was, for similar reasons, supposed to be called La or LA. You know, the whole pronunciation thing. Choose whatever you like. Rhyhorn is able to learn Thunderbolt for some reason. Also, except in Legends Arceus, because I don't know. The move exists. The Pokemon exists there. I guess Hisui is built different. Rhydon can learn Surf. I would say it's kind of joke on the name, because you can ride on it. Though that wouldn't fit with the Japanese name, and yeah, those were the guys who decided to make it able to learn surf long before the English name was created. Thus, I have no idea why it is able to. It is really weird. Chansey's Japanese name is Lucky, and later on in the series, it is capable of carrying lucky eggs. Tangela's French name is, excuse me, Sac de Nœud, from Sac de Nœuds. I have no idea if I pronounced that correctly, but I assume it was at least close. And this means sack of knots. I think that's funny. The gender ratio of Kangaskhan is 100% female, and Pokédex entries do state that only the female ones carry the young ones in their pouches. Now, when will we ever see a male one? Would be kinda easy to make those because, well, just leave out the baby and the pouch. Horsey's artwork from Pokemon Red and Pokemon Blue depicted with two fins, which also kinda like arms, despite it actually only having one fin on the back. Seedra's EV yield, which is 1 defense and 1 special attack, is unique. No other Pokemon gives you that amount of EVs. In all 5 Super Smash Bros. Games, as well as Pokemon Conquest, Goldeen is seen using Splash. Goldeen cannot learn Splash. Despite Seeking being purely Water type, it can still learn the move Soak, which turns you into a pure Water type. I guess you could counteract other moves that would change your type into something else, though that's such a rare occasion that you really don't want to waste a slot for Soak, do you? In Gold and Silver, Staryu was programmed to be able to learn egg moves. However, Staryu can only breed with Ditto due to it being genderless, and thus completely being unable to learn any egg moves, even though they were programmed in. These moves were removed in Crystal, though. Starmie is the only Psychic-type Pokemon in the Water 3 egg group. Except Japanese, German, and Chinese, all other language names for Mr. Mime have it gendered, even though it's not supposed to be gendered, because there can be males and females. Scyther is the only Pokemon that, upon evolution, doesn't change its base stat total. So basically, when you evolve Scyther, it is a decision if you rather want a Bug Flying or a Bug Steel type, and also the base stat distribution does change. So yeah, it's kinda neat, and I think Onix should have been like that too, because, well, honestly, these Pokemon could be standalone Pokemon that are just similar to ones we have. Despite a lot of people claiming that it is about, well, racism, Jinx is just simply based on a Japanese style of, well, clothing, hairstyles, the whole package, which is called the Gyaru style. They still changed it from being a black-faced thing to a purple-faced thing, and if that is a good decision or not, well, that's for you to decide. Electabuzz' Red and Blue Pokédex entry says, normally found near power plants, they can wander away and cause major blackouts in cities, which would mean that the power plants actually take the electricity from these Pokemon. However, Yellow does contradict that by saying if a major power outage occurs, it is certain that this Pokemon has eaten the electricity at that power plant. So what is it now? Make up your mind. In the anime, it is claimed by Ash's Pokédex that Magmar has only ever been found near active volcanoes. Sure, the anime isn't the games, but the games also claim that it is born in an active volcano, though it could get away from that wandering around. Because there's actually only one active volcano we know about in the Pokemon world so far. and they do not appear at that volcano from Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald. Well, that's a missed opportunity. Pinsir and Scyther once were parts of a duo, but then Scyther decided to evolve, leaving Pinsir alone. And then Heracross came, and Pinsir wasn't alone anymore. What a sad story. And yes, there's not much interesting trivia about Pinsir, honestly. Tauros is the only Pokemon that has 3 different regional forms in one generation. Magikarp's Japanese name is Koi King, basically meaning King of the Koi. And that is very much depicted by that fin on top of its head, which looks like a crown, fitting of a king. Gyarados not being a dragon type, despite many fans thinking it should be, actually makes sense because it is based on a legend where a koi jumps up a waterfall and turns into a dragon. However, this legend also includes that if a dragon is corrupted by its own rage, it will get the dragon status revoked from itself. Thus, it's not a dragon anymore. In Generation 2, when you surf on a Lapras, your sprite will also change into the sprite of a Lapras. However, this sprite represents your player character, and thus, in Crystal, depending on if you play as a boy or girl, Professor Oak might not know what you are, then it will change color accordingly. In the Super Smash Bros. Series, Ditto is the only non-playable Pokemon that can actually be defeated. In early promotional art styles, Eevee was known as Eon, which is the suffix that all the evolutions got. Vaporeon is the only evolution that does not share any weakness with another evolution. Albeit electric types being immune to being paralyzed, it is possible to get a paralyzed Jolteon by having your Eevee being paralyzed and then evolving it with a Thunderstone. What do you gain from that? I don't know. It doesn't seem to serve any purpose, but it is possible. Larion is the only evolution that is super effective against multiple other evolutions. Porygon is the only 3-stage evolution that needs a trait for every of its evolutions. According to Pokemon Sword, Omanyte was revived from fossils and then released so much that it is starting to become a problem. Guess we need to get it extinct again. Well, a lot of Omastar's names, but not all of them, include the word star in some kind, apparently alluding to its star shape or the 5 pointy horns it has on its shell. I don't know, I can vaguely see the star, but honestly wouldn't name it after that. Kabuto and its evolution share their Pokemon category with Blastoise. Weird, they do not look alike. Well, of course they are the shellfish Pokemon. They're not shellfish. According to Pokédex entries for Kabutops, it slashes its prey with its claws. It has sickles rather than claws. And drains the body fluids. Does that mean it has some kind of mouth? Maybe like a beak or something? That sounds like something long that... You know what? That's very gruesome to think of. Let's move on. Let's just move on. Pokemon is dark. Aerodactyl is the only Generation 1 Rock-type Pokemon that does not have a 4 times weakness to grass. Snorlax is the only black-colored Pokemon from Generation 1. Yeah, that's a weird fact, but, well, they liked to be colorful back then. Of the three legendary birds, Articuno is technically the weakest of them, being, when it comes to type effectiveness, is weak to the fire type due to its ice type that Lavados has, and Zapdos' electric type due to the flying type it has. By that logic, Zapdos is basically the strongest. Out of all the Pokemon that have a fixed location, Zapdos is the one that can be obtained the earliest, with you only needing 2 batches for you to reach it. Out of the 3 legendary birds, Moltres is the only one that in Leaf Green and Fire Red changed the location where you find it. Instead of the Victory Road, it had become Mount Amber now. Despite not having the same name in all languages, though it does in 3, which are Spanish, German, and Italian, all their names basically mean tiny dragon. Dragonair is also the name of an airline from Hong Kong. Well, it was. They did change their name recently. Dragonite is the only Pokemon that was owned by one of Ash's companions that he later on would get one of it himself. According to the journals in the Pokemon Mansion, Mewtwo's birthday is on February 6th. And no, this is not a joke. And Mew here is only found in the wild in one game, which is Pokemon Emerald. Though, yeah, you need the old C map for that, an event exclusive to Japan and Taiwan that Long is not be able to achieve anymore, and thus in the core series, no wild Mews for you. Whew, and that is it! The original 151 done. We will see each other with the next batch of 100 new Pokemon, which comes out when it comes out. Isn't there a way for you to actually see when this episode will come out? Yes, you could subscribe. I am such a YouTuber. Well, I hope you check out all my links in the description and everything, and I hope to see you again. So until next time, bye!